So who's one player from every championship club who we've not yet seen the best of so far this season? Let's talk about it. Guys, welcome back to another video on the channel. I'd very much like your input on this one in the comments down below. I want to know one player from your club who it's not quite happened for so far this season. For whatever reason, the player that I picked out from each championship club, it's either not happened for them so far this season because of an injury, they might just not have been being picked by the manager, they might have fallen down the pecking order a little bit, or when they have been playing, their performances just haven't quite been up to scratch. So a few things to take into consideration for today's video, but I'd certainly like to see more of these players as the season goes on. If you do go on to enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a like. If we can hit 300 likes, that would be massively appreciated. But without any further ado, let's jump into this one. Barnsley, Obiolare. Now, usually by November, we've got a grasp of how the new summer signings at different clubs have sort of settled in so far. But with Olare, I've got absolutely no idea. He's only played 14 minutes of championship football so far this season. And Barnsley did spend a fair whack on him. I think it went down as an undisclosed fee, but I think it was over £1 million they laid out for him in the end. He did have a previous stint in England, a short one with Watford, where I think they paid over £6 million for him at the time. But he's had some complications with the transfer. I think initially there was a visa issue which meant he couldn't get playing for them. Then he's had some fitness issues since then, and now we're at this point in November where we've just not really seen him kick much of a ball so far. Birmingham, Ivan Sanchez. In what was quite a boring season for Blues fans last year, Ivan Sanchez was one of the bright spots during that time. So far this season though, he's not featured all too much under Lee Bowyer, mostly because of fitness issues and injuries once again, but it'll be interesting to see where he actually fits Sanchez in, because Bowie has since changed system to this new approach with the sort of wing backs and things like that. Jeremy Bell has adapted quite well to becoming one of those wing backs, but I'm not sure Sanchez would fall into a similar mould. Whether they can get the best out of him, maybe playing as that number 10, time will tell. But I certainly think in terms of like technical ability, Sanchez is arguably the best in that Birmingham squad. Blackburn Rovers, Bradley Dack. Obviously, it's not just one big injury that Bradley Dack's had to come back from. It's the second one that he picked up more recently. He has been stepping up his recovery from what I've recently been reading, and maybe could be back in the frame for Blackburn sometime around the new year. And Bradley Dack's ability at championship level is certainly not to be sniffed at, and it's been a shame really that his past couple of seasons have been interrupted by two serious injuries. But his goal record at this level is similar to that of a striker. I know when Blackburn were initially promoted to the Championship, Bradley Dack almost played as a second striker, sort of as that number 10 bouncing off Danny Graham, and Blackburn have adapted the way they've played more so, you know, they now go with that sort of 4-3-3, and it's then 3 players playing off the front who are involved in most of the goals. But don't be sleeping on Bradley Dack when he does get himself back up and going. Blackpool, Dimitri Mitchell. He was one of their standout performers towards the end of the last season, and particularly in that playoff campaign that Blackpool had. In the playoff final, he was absolutely fantastic, and by all accounts was looking really good for them in pre-season as well. Then I think in their final match of pre-season picked up an injury which obviously ruled him out for the start of the season, and then since then has slowly been working his way back into the side, with the majority of his appearances so far this season coming on as a substitute. But Blackpool certainly have a lot of competitions for those wide places at the moment. Bournemouth, Junior Stanislas. The guy's just not been able to keep himself fit so far this season. He had quite the role to play in that Bournemouth side last season, got 14 goal contributions, scored a couple of cracking free kicks along the way, but so far this season just hasn't been able to get his fitness back. He's only played 76 minutes of championship football so far this season, so obviously he'll be hoping to get himself back up and going sooner rather than later. Bristol City, Antonin Semenyo. Frustratingly so, he's been kept out of action I think so far with a couple of knocks throughout the season, and I really thought that this year would be quite the breakthrough year for him. You know, last season he played more football than ever for Bristol City, started to get his numbers up a little bit in terms of goal contributions. He got 6 last season, and I think at times Bristol City probably have missed a player like Semenyo. Cardiff City, Kiefer Moore. Now obviously this one does come with the caveat that since Morrison has come in, we have seen a lot more out of Kiefer Moore, and up until the point where McCarthy was still in charge, it was quite a disappointing campaign so far for Kiefer Kiefer Moore. I don't think that all that was his fault. You know, he was looking quite frustrated, to be honest with you, in a lot of the games that I saw him in, because of that lack of service in 14 games under Mick McCarthy. He scored just 1 goal this season, and seemingly Morrison's had that instant impact with Moore. Obviously him previously being a striker, because in the 3 games that he's been in charge of so far, Kiefer Moore's popped up with 3 goals and an assist. So long may that continue for him, and hopefully he'll be able to get himself back up to that level of form that he showed last season. Coventry, Bright and Bakare. Now, he actually had his contract cancelled at the start of November, so isn't a player that we're going to get to see the best of in a Coventry shirt. I think the Coventry fans knew that this signing in the summer was always going to be a little bit of a gamble, and Coventry fans, probably frustratingly so, know the natural talent that he has because of that previous loan spell. But for whatever reason, you know, off the pitch issues and things like that, it's just not worked out for him this season at Coventry, and has thus had his contract terminated. Derby County, Christian Bielik. Obviously, we're yet to see him in the Championship so far this season due to him still coming back from that injury last time. But what's gutting from a Derby fan's perspective is the fact that we may never see Bielik in the Derby shirt ever again. Obviously, the other point deduction that has recently been applied to Derby has all but sealed their relegation to League One heading into next season, and someone like Bielik would imagine would be probably that first player out the door come January. I know that his injury record hasn't exactly been gleaming, but in terms of talent and current ability within that Derby squad, I think there'll be plenty of takers come January. Fulham, Michael Hector. Surely because we've not been able to see all too much of him so far this season. It's been Adarabioyo and Tim Ream who have been the preferred partnership for Marco Silva at the back so far this season. But to be fair to Michael Hector, in the most recent 2 matches where he has been given a chance in, I think he's looked pretty good, to be honest with you. Clean sheets against both Blackburn and Peterborough. And I think we forget just how good Hector was in the second half of that season when Fulham last got promoted. He absolutely sorted out their defence last time around. So yeah, I hope to see him get a few more opportunities after this international break now. Huddersfield Town, Jordan Rhodes. Now, in the summer, don't get me wrong, I like the sort of romance of this transfer, you know, a former hero coming back to his side where he was once great, you know, towards the twilight of his career. But in typical Jordan Rhodes fashion, he picked up an injury at the start of the season, which meant that we've not really seen much at all from him so far this season. He is picking up his rehabilitation though, and does appear to be getting closer to full fitness and getting back into the Huddersfield side. And it's at that point where we can properly judge and see how much he still actually has to offer to this Huddersfield team going forward. Hull City, Nathan Baxter. Now, he had one fantastic performance before the international break as Hull went on to beat Barnsley. Made some absolutely terrific saves in that match, and I'm guessing that he'll have done enough from that performance to go ahead and claim the #1 spot going forward this season. I assumed coming into this year that he would be their #1, but it was Matt Ingram who was given the nod. And to be fair to Ingram, he's not necessarily been awful so far this season. I actually think that along the year so far, he's actually had some very good performances and kept Hull in quite a few matches so far. But Baxter, I must say I was really excited about before the season. Last season, when he was out on loan at Accrington, some of his numbers in terms of save percentage and shots saved and things like that, he was right up there in terms of one of the best goalkeepers in League One. And so the more we get to see of him this season in the Championship with Hull, the more I'm quite excited about, really. Luton Town, Carlos Mendez Gomez. A lot of people, myself included, were really excited about this deal in the summer. You know, he came off the back of a terrific season with Morecambe in League 2, where he scored 16 goals and got 5 assists. But that jump from League 2 to the Championship is quite substantial. I think that it does take players quite a bit of time to have that adaptation period. And so far for Mendez Gomez, we've just not really seen it from him because he's not really been given all too many opportunities. He's only played 124 minutes in the Championship so far this season, with 1 start and then 5 appearances coming in off the bench. And I think that maybe for the majority of this season we will probably see mostly sort of cameo appearances from him, and then going forward into the future, maybe next season when he has properly acclimatised to the level, that's when we'll maybe see the best of him. Middlesbrough, I'm going to go for Martin Pereiro. He was Middlesbrough's big money signing during the summer. To be fair to Warnock, towards the end he did start to use him a little bit more, but I still don't think we've fully seen the best of him, and I'm really excited to see how Chris Wilder's going to go ahead and actually use him. I think that from the glimpses that we have seen of him, he does look look like he can be a really good creative spark from that midfield. And Middlesbrough do have the other sort of like workman-like players to go ahead and put around him. So yeah, very interested to see how Wilder will look to get the best out of him for the rest of the season, because I certainly think there's a player there. Millwall, Conor Mahoney, he's a bit of a weird one, to be honest with you. I think that Millwall signed him for quite a bit of money a couple of seasons ago, didn't they? I think they spent about 1.1 million on him, and since coming in, he has had glimpses of quality, but it seems like it's just been that. They have just been sort of glimpses in what has been an otherwise quite inconsistent time from his time at the Den so far this season. Albeit he's not been given, you know, start after start. Sometimes his game time has been a little bit limited. That has been the case so far this season, where he's played just 154 minutes. But with, I think, his contract running out come the end of this season, Millwall fans, what do you think the future holds for Mahoney? Nottingham Forest, Joe Carvalho. Are we at that point now where we just have to accept that it's not going to happen for Joe Carvalho in a Nottingham Forest shirt? It's frustrating because things started out quite promisingly for him this season. Obviously, he had that loan spell out last time, came back to Forest, scored that brace in the League Cup against Bradford, but since then his opportunities have been fairly few and far between, yet to feature under Steve Cooper so far this season. And to be honest, I'm not sure where he really fits in this Cooper setup. Obviously, I suppose Cooper had Bertrand Salina for a little bit while he was at Swansea, who is a similar sort of player in that number 10 role, but I think this one will probably go down as a bit of wasted potential. Peterborough, I'll go for Jonson Clarke-Harris, although I do think that, you know, before the international break, we are now starting to see Jonson Clarke-Harris being that player at this level that we all thought he would be. He's had his difficulties so far this season. I don't think that he was 100% fit at the start of the season. I remember when Peterborough came to Deepdale, Clarke-Harris just seemed to be a yard or two off the pace in terms of his actual fitness. After that then, he had that suspension, and since then has been getting himself back into the side and does look a lot sharper in front of goals. And 5 goal contributions at this stage of the season isn't the worst return in the world, but I do think that there is more to come from him, because yeah, we all thought that he'd be their main guy this season, and so far most of that has probably fallen on the shoulders of Dembele. Preston North End, Matthew Olasunde. Is he a real person? Does he actually exist? I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. I've not seen the guy in the flesh so far this season. Preston have had a pretty shoddy track record with our summer transfers so far in terms of their fitness levels and their injury records so far, and Olasunde is yet to feature for North End. However, I am led to believe that he is getting himself back up. You know, he's played in a couple of bounce games recently. I'm hopeful that after this international break now, we'll finally get to see him in the Championship, because yeah, we literally know nothing about him as of right now. QPR, Seny Dieng. Now, I think that this could be the case of him being a bit of a victim of his own success, because he set the bar so high for himself last season, but has he quite reached those levels this season? For me, not quite. He's 22nd in the Championship at the moment when it comes to save percentage of Championship goalkeepers, and I know that that's not the be-all and end-all, and I think that sometimes he's probably not helped by the fact of how open QPR actually are and how many shots on goal he faces. But in terms of the goals that he has conceded so far, I've looked at a couple of them this season, and we have picked out Dieng on a couple of episodes of the Championship Roundup and said, could he have done better there? I think that in a few instances, the answer probably has been yes. So yeah, Seny Dieng is a player who I think there's more to come from so far this season. QPR fans, would you agree with that? Reading George Puskas, it's just not worked out for him so far this season, and generally in his Reading career, to be honest with you. He's a really weird player, Puskas, because he is quite a streaky striker. He is that sort of player who will score like 5 in 3, and then he'll go the next like 30 games without scoring. And so far this season, he does find himself on quite the goal drought. I think there's an account on Twitter that tweets every day, you know, how many days has it been since he last scored for Reading. I think it's like over 200 days now or something silly like that. But with Reading obviously recently signing Andy Carroll, it looks as if their patience has run out with Puskas. We thought that when Joe picked up that injury, naturally Puskas would be the guy to step in, but when he has got those opportunities, it's just not happened for him. Sheffield United, Ryan Brewster. To be fair, before the international break, he finally got that monkey off his back of scoring that first league goal for Sheffield United in that defeat to Blackburn. But so far this season, to be fair to Brewster, I don't think he's been utilised in his best role. You know, the majority of his football has come on that right-hand side, and even then, he's not played that many minutes so far this season. He's only played 465 minutes for Sheffield United in what has been a bit of a clunky side so far this season, which is probably the kindest way of describing Sheffield United. But there have been quite a lot of players that I could have picked out for this video, but Brewster is still someone who I do have faith to eventually come good, but maybe not on that right hand side for me. Stoke City, Tyrese Campbell, obviously we're still in the early days of him properly getting himself back up and going. You know, it's a long-term injury that he's coming off the back of, and I don't think anyone was expecting him to be, you know, jumping in at the deep end to be just as good as he was when he last left off. But I certainly think that once that first goal comes and, you know, he is in the position where he can be starting week to week, don't be sleeping on Tyrese Campbell for all too long, obviously. The gutting news for Stoke has been that they've lost Harry Souttar, a massive loss at the back there, so they'll be hoping to make up for that in the goals department going forward, and hopefully for Campbell that first league goal won't be all too far away now. Swansea City, Michael Obafemi, we've only seen a few sort of fleeting performances so far from him, and obviously, you know, Joe Carvalho has been the main man for Swansea so far this season, but interestingly he was left out of the squad that travelled to Bournemouth, and Russell Martin said some quite interesting things off the back of that, basically saying that this is a time, you know, in his career where he needs to knuckle down in training. You know, he wants to see that professionalism from him, and so these next few months and probably this whole season under Russell Martin will be quite the learning curve and experience, not just for him as a footballer, but you know, as a human being and a professional as well. No doubt there's buckets of talent there, but it's all about unlocking that in the right way. West Brom, Grady Diangana. Now, I certainly don't think that Diangana has been like awful so far this season, but I hold him to quite a high bar because of how good he was in West Brom's last promotion season. I don't think that stylistically maybe Diangana has been the best fit into this system so far this season. I think that's seen by his dribbling numbers so far this season. In that Slaven Bilic team last time round, it allowed Diangana to get on the ball, a lot of link-up play with Pereira as well. He was averaging 2.4 dribbles per 90 in that side. So far this season that number's down to 0.6, so he does have a bit less of an influence on this side at the moment, but that first goal he got before the international break hopefully will have been the real spark to start his career once again with West Brom this season. But there we have it, guys. There was one pick for every championship club of a player who I don't think we've yet seen the best of so far this season, and maybe heading into the second half of the season we may see a little bit more from them. But I'd be interested to know a player from your club who you've still got, you know, quite high expectations of them coming good. Let me know about them in the comments down below. But as always, if you do go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like and do stick around and subscribe for some regular championship content. Thanks for watching though, guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.